Almost all countries in the world have severe restrictions for guns. For example, except for some states in the United States and Yemen, all other countries require that you have a gun license before you may purchase and carry a handgun. However, knives are available in every country. With restrictions, you're able to carry knives in almost every country. That said, please consult with your lawyer. I am not a lawyer, and nothing in this video is legal advice. For example, even in the UK, where knife laws are super restrictive, you may still legally carry an up to 3-inch blade slip joint pocket knife, such as a Spyderco UK pen knife. Although it's not a lock blade knife, there is a finger notch that you can use to keep the knife blade from shutting on your fingers. Also, if you have access to a good lawyer, there's always a legal loophole that will allow you to carry a knife. This is because knives are not weapons, but tools that are useful in normal everyday life. For example, even before firearm concealed carry law was legal in Texas, I was able to carry a gun and a knife legally. If you have a good lawyer, he won't tell you that something is illegal, but instead, he'll show you how to do something that you want to do legally. I always had reservations at a hunting lodge in another town. I had a hunting and fishing license with me at all times. As long as you were hunting or on your way to a hunt, it was legal to carry a gun and a knife. To make it believable, I drove a Ford pickup, and I also carried a revolver and a buck knife. That said, cops aren't lawyers, so I may still get arrested, but my lawyer assured me that he could get all charges dropped. Recently, I traveled to another country for a 3-month sabbatical, and I got a part-time job as a sushi chef. If any cop asks why I was carrying a couple of kitchen knives, I just show them photos of me working in the sushi restaurant. In the country where I was visiting, it was illegal to carry a knife unless you have a job or are coming and going to a job that requires you to have a knife. Generally speaking, in most countries, if you have a legit non-self-defense reason to carry a knife, then it's generally legal to do so. Again, check with your lawyer. I am not a lawyer, and this is not legal advice because different countries have different specific laws, and I am overgeneralizing here. I have access to an international law firm on retainer. If you don't have access to a law firm on retainer, then hire a local lawyer in the country that you're visiting for a consultation. An hour consultation with a lawyer shouldn't cost more than $10 to $50 or so in most third world countries. Next, you should choose a proper EDC knife to carry. If a knife has any chance of being used for self-defense, then it should be a fixed blade knife. This is because when the adrenaline is pumping, you will lose all of your fine motor functions. I have been involved in some situations where I had to defend my life with force and I possibly unalive some people. In all these instances, I shook uncontrollably afterwards for roughly 30 minutes. I possessed zero fine motor functions. All these internet armchair jockeys who recommend a folding knife for self-defense don't know what they're talking about. They've never had to unalive someone while defending themselves or a loved one from a violent attacker in a third world country. If you have to putz around with a folding knife with zero fine motor functions, then you'll either drop your knife or accidentally cut your own fingers off if the blade is spring-loaded. However, you can easily deploy a fixed blade knife just by simply pulling it out of its sheath. No fine motor functions are necessary. Also, make sure that your fixed blade knife is sturdy. It should be able to survive a firm whack from an improvised weapon such as a chair or a baseball bat. Make sure that your knife is pointy and sharp. If it's dull, sharpen it. If you don't have any experience sharpening knives, then bring it to a professional knife sharpener. Also, make sure that the knife feels good in your hand. Furthermore, your knife should have a handguard to prevent your hand from slipping forward and cutting your fingers off while stabbing something with your knife. Your knife should also have a flared pommel, so after you stab something, you can pull out your knife, because sometimes the knife may get stuck inside whatever you're stabbing. Moreover, a self-defense knife should be made of stainless steel or ceramic coated to prevent rust, because blood has salt in it which will rust spots on your knife. Also, Your EDC knife should be inexpensive and mass-produced because a custom or rare knife can easily be traced back to you. Finally, your self-defense knife's blade should be 4 to 5.5 inches. The minimum blade length is 4 inches because the human heart is 3 inches under the chest, on average. The average heart has a 1/2 inch thick muscle. These are average numbers, so some guys could be fatter than this. Therefore, the minimum size blade for a self-defense knife should be 4 inches. The maximum size blade should be 5.5 inches. This is because any fixed blade knife with a blade bigger than 5.5 inches would be extremely hard to conceal carry, especially in the summer when you're wearing a t-shirt and shorts. Finally, the knife and sheath should be a package that is comfortable to wear and lightweight. My favorite EDC knife that I carry 95% of the time is my Morakniv Kansbol. This is a very practical knife. It has a compound grind. This means that half of the blade towards the tip is thinner for easier slicing. The thinness of the blade makes this knife very easy to use for food prep. There's almost zero slicing resistance. It is a joy to use for food prep. Other knife reviewers will baton wood and make feather sticks of knives. However, they don't do food prep with their knives. This is stupid. I mean, when was the last time you pulled out your EDC knife to baton wood or make a feather stick? I'll bet that the last time you pulled out your EDC knife, you used it either to prepare food or open a mail order package. The other half of the blade closer to the grip has a steeper edge grind for better chopping. Normally, you have to carry 2 knives, one for slicing and another for chopping. But with a compound grind knife, you can always carry 1 knife for dual tasks. The Morakniv Kansbol also has a handguard and a grippy rubber grip to prevent your hand from slipping forward and slicing your own fingers off when your knife suddenly stops in mid-stab because your knife hit a rib. Also, sometimes when you stab something, your knife gets stuck inside whatever you stabbed. If your hand slips off the knife while trying to pull your knife out of whatever you just stabbed, you could lose your knife. To prevent this, the Morakniv Kansbol has a flared pommel. This knife doesn't have a full tang. This saves on weight and makes the knife light as a feather, so you can easily carry this all day. The small size of this knife allows you to carry it in your pocket as a pocket knife. Finally, the Kansbol comes with a cool sheath that allows you to carry this inside the waistband with your shirt tucked in for ease of concealment. My second EDC knife is my Gerber Strongarm. This is a very tactical knife, but it is not practical. That's why I only carry it 5% of the time. It is better for stabbing than the Kansbol because it is pointier. It is also better for stabbing because it has more reach. The Kansbol has a 4-inch blade, while the Strongarm has a 5-inch blade. The Strongarm is also very resistant to breakage from weapon strikes because it is very thick blade and is full tang. However, the thicker blade and full tang also makes this a very heavy knife to lug around all day. The thicker blade also gives a lot of resistance when you try to slice through things with this knife. This knife feels very awkward when you try to use it for food prep due to the slicing resistance from the extra thick blade. Also, although this knife is able to take a lot of abuse without being damaged, it cannot easily do any big knife tasks due to its small size. For example, the blade is too short to baton a coconut quickly. A machete can crack open a coconut much faster than a Gerber Strongarm. The handguard on the Strongarm is also more aggressive. The Strongarm has a glass breaker that can double as a skull breaker in an emergency. Finally, the Strongarm comes with a sheath that will allow you to carry it inside the waistband or scout carry it behind your back. However, this sheath is bulky and hard to conceal under a tucked shirt. If you don't like the Morakniv Kansbol because it is too practical, and if you don't like the Gerber Strongarm because it is too tactical, then a good compromise would be the Morakniv Companion. The Companion has a pointier tip than a Kansbol, so it is better at stabbing. However, it lacks the compound grind of the Kansbol. The half of the blade closer to the tip is thinner on the Kansbol, but on the Companion, the tip of a blade is not thinner. The tip is actually quite thick to prevent it from breaking when you're stabbing through something hard. This makes the Companion more tactical than the Kansbol. However, the Companion is not full tang, so it is more lightweight and practical to carry around than the Gerber Strongarm. Many soldiers fighting for Ukraine carry the Companion, probably because it is inexpensive as it only costs $18. I'm a student of the martial arts of gunfighting and knife fighting. When fighting with knives, you should always fight with two knives. This is because while you're using one knife to block your opponent's knife or gun, you are simultaneously using the other knife to counterattack. I usually carry at least two knives. I'm not a big guy, so I don't have enough real estate on my body to conceal carry two fixed blade knives. So I usually carry one fixed blade knife and a folding pocket knife. There are only two types of folding knives that won't fold and chop off your fingers if you whack the knife with a baseball bat. These two knives are butterfly knives and Cold Steel's triad lock knives. My favorite pocket knife is the Cold Steel Espada Large. It has a 5.5-inch blade. It is pretty big, but it can be carried inside my pants pocket because it is foldable. It features the triad lock mechanism, which makes it as tough as a fixed blade knife against folding under pressure. You can whack a triad lock knife with a baseball bat and it will not fold on your fingers. The Espada is large enough to crack open a coconut, yet small enough to use as a makeshift table knife. The size of the Espada is the maximum size to use for small knife tasks, such as slicing fruit at the office. However, it is also big enough to chop open a coconut. It is very pointy and razor sharp. It comes from the factory so sharp that you could shave with it. Although it has no handguard nor flared pommel, it does have these finger grooves that will keep your grip secured. The knife's handle is also very thick and sturdy. It has a wave opening mechanism that allows it to be opened by catching a tab on your pants. However, when under adrenaline pressure, this knife doesn't always catch reliably on your pants. Also, you can't practice opening it by catching it on your pants, because doing so repeatedly will eat up your pants pockets. Finally, the Espada might be a bit too big to be used politely as a table knife. Because of its impolite size, I think the Espada is more tactical than practical. I usually pair this knife with the Kansbol, which is smaller and more polite to use as a table knife. I carry the Espada 80% of the time. My other favorite pocket knife is the Kershaw Lucha. It is an all stainless steel balisong with a 4.5-inch blade. It is very pointy and the blade is very narrow, so it easily slips between the ribs of a perp's rib cage. The folding mechanism of a butterfly knife is the only folding mechanism that is stronger than a triad lock. If you were to whack a lucha on the spine with a baseball bat, it will not fold on your fingers. However, the blade is not as thick as the Espada, so it is not suitable for chopping anything. It is primarily a tool for stabbing and slicing. This knife is razor sharp, and because of the flat grind blade geometry, presents almost zero slicing resistance. You can literally hold the knife with just your thumb and pinky finger and slice through anything. Also, in an emergency situation, if your hands are shaking due to the adrenaline dump, you cannot deploy the blade, so you may use the stainless steel handle of a closed lucha as a blunt force trauma weapon. However, the lucha is not very tactical because it lacks a handguard. Therefore, you have to hold it with the butt of the handle on your palm to prevent your hand from slipping forward and slicing your own fingers while stabbing something. Also, the lucha lacks a flared pommel, so after stabbing something, if your blade got stuck inside what you just stabbed and your hand slipped off the blade a little, then curl your pinky finger around the latch to prevent your hand from slipping further off the handle. I carry the lucha 20% of the time. Finally, I don't want you to obsess over your choice of knives for EDC. This is because your choice of EDC tools only contributes 20% to your survival in an emergency situation. Your best thing that you can do that contributes to 80% of your survival is to do what nobody else does these days. I invite you to take your face off the phone. Pay attention to your surroundings. Attention buys you time, and time buys you options. For example, I was walking towards a restaurant from a parking lot with a friend of mine and his daughter. Her father walked ahead to get a table for us. She started walking across the street with her face buried in her phone. A car came careening around the corner. I saw this, grabbed a short collar, and pulled her back onto the sidewalk. I saved her from being hit by a car. If she didn't have her face buried in her phone, she would have noticed the speeding car. Anyways, I suggest that you carry 3 knives, 1 tactical knife, a second practical knife, and a small multi-tool on your keychain. such as the Victorinox Rambler or Classic. I've conveniently placed links to all the knives described in this video in the description of the video below.